DJI have released a new Fly App 1.12.2, released yesterday, I believe, or late, early hours in the morning. Anyway, along with that came a firmware update for this little fella, the DJI RC. So let's get straight into the video and have a look exactly what it's all about. So hello, welcome once again to the channel, and today is the release of 1.12.2, which is only available on the Apple and Android phones to use with the RC N1 controller. However, as I did say earlier, there is an update firmware for the DJI RC and also a aircraft firmware for the Mini 3 Pro. This little guy is been out of action for the last couple of weeks due to the launch of the DJI Mini 4. So let's get straight into the video and have a look exactly what the update brings us. So as you can see just here, version 01.03.0600. I did check back on the last firmware update, which was 0500, which was done by me on 5th of September, I think it was. Anyway, moving on to the video. So having a quick look through the menus. Pretty pointless really, because as we know, it's not a fly update, unfortunately. We're still on 1.11.4 with the DJI RC. But interestingly, when we get to the About section, you'll notice that the aircraft firmware, when I go to select it, I always check these menus when we've had an update anyway. But moving swiftly on, so back in September you can see this release here, 0500 on the aircraft firmware and 0500 on the RC firmware, and that brought us all the AR features like the vision assist, the shadow function, and the flight path, that AR flight path. So that was back in September. So looking into the latest update, we can see just here we've got 01.00.0700 for the aircraft firmware and 01.03.0600 the RC firmware. Interestingly, when we check for updates, and I always do this after an RC update firmware, you can see just here it's telling me that there's a new firmware available, which is quite odd. So this new aircraft firmware update, the aircraft firmware will be updated to the latest version to prevent flight safety risks due to inconsistent firmware versions between aircraft modules. Now, I just believe that this is an extra firmware or an updated firmware to what we normally would do. We would normally, when you're transferring between the two different drones, say the Mavic 3 and the Mini 3 Pro, you have to accept that new firmware. So I believe that this is an updated firmware for that. So moving on after the firmware, I just wanted to just double check and make sure that there's no more firmware updates available. So we'll look straight into the menu once again in the About section. And as you can see just here, 1.11.4 app version, aircraft firmware 0700 and the RC firmware 0600, and it's all up to date. Interestingly, I have checked the DJI RC2 and there's no firmware available for that as yet. So the 1.12.2 Fly App is only for the, as I said earlier in the video, only for the phones, iOS and Android. So checking with the RC N1 controller, obviously we have to repair the aircraft to that controller, which we've just done, and looking into the menus just so we can just double check that nothing has actually changed and we've just got that bug fix. So I'm just going to speed up here because it's pointless running through all these menus until we get to the About section. But as you can see just there, 1.12.2 and the aircraft firmware is 700 and the RC firmware on the N1 is 600. So it's basically nothing's changed whatsoever, not that I can see. If you guys out there have found any differences between the app versions, then please do let me know. but yeah, I just checked the height restriction to see if that was any different, and it's actually not. As you can see, it goes up to 500, so that's all good news. So like I say, pointless really just going through all the menus, because I've been through them and nothing has actually changed. So there we go, nothing new, nothing changed in the Fly app. As you can see, as I went through the menus in the Fly app, nothing's changed whatsoever. Now it does say fix some bugs, usual DJI thing. So if you've been having trouble with the DJI Mini 3 Pro or problems with the DJI RC, then it might be an idea to update the firmware. I can guarantee that the height is still the same, 500 meters, so that's not a problem at the moment here in the UK. I can't say for Europe users, but certainly worth looking at, getting it updated, and happy flying. I did do a short flight just around the local neighbourhood. I don't like flying around there, but there we go. I just put it up and just did a couple of tests. I'm not going to bore you to death with that. So, hope you've got something use out of the video. If you have, don't forget, give us the old thumbs up. And if you're new around here, why don't you consider subscribing, dinging the dong, and all the rest of it. And you might like to watch these couple of videos just here that I've chosen for you. And if you do, I shall see you over there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.